Welcome. A few classes have read the book Ground Zero, but for those who haven't, here's how it played out.
In Ground Zero, we read about two kids, Rashmina and Brandon, who both have a serious situation to tackle.
Brandon's side of the story takes place on 9/11 in the North Twin Tower. Brandon has to try and escape out of the building before it collapses, but also help his dad escape too. Along the way, he meets people, but one person, Richard, helps Brandon the most.
Rashmina's story takes place in Afghanistan, where war is surging between the Taliban and the Americans. Rashmina is struggling to keep her twin brother Passoon from joining the Taliban. Rashmina also houses a wounded soldier named Taz, but has to hide him because the Taliban will be mad that they are housing him. Did Rashmina just endanger her whole village? Along the way, Rashmina meets people, but the person who she likes the best is either Miriam, the translator, or Taz, the wounded soldier.
After reading this book, we felt the need to honor the veterans who have recently served in the Afghanistan war.
After brainstorming, we decided to interview veterans who have served recently and put responses into the video you're about to see.
Enjoy!
Myself a little bit. I was in high school when the September 11th attacks happened, and I wanted to join the military right after high school, but my parents were kind of afraid, because the war in Iraq at that time was going on. So my parents were trying to talk me out of it, and they said, well, we'll pay for college. College is really expensive, and they agreed to pay for college if I decided to do that instead of joining the military. So I said, okay, I'll give college a shot. I was not the typical person who enlists in the military. I was 26 when I decided to enlist in the Marine Corps, which is the cutoff. So I graduated college, and then I got a job, and I just felt like there was something missing from my life. And it was getting at that age where if I didn't do it now, then like I'd be past the cutoff and I'd never be able to. And I didn't want to live with regrets. I didn't want to be like, man, that's something I wish I would have done when I was younger. So I said, you know what? I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna decide to enlist when I was 26, and it was a good decision for me.
So I really wanted to go to college, and I grew up in a house that did not have a lot of money, and my mom and dad did not go to college. So I knew for me to be able to do that, I would have to find a way to pay for it. And having that recruiter come to my high school, I was able to find out that if I joined, I could get my college paid for. So I did.
Well, I chose to go into the Army, and I wanted to join the Army because they had a really good program for people who wanted to go into the medical field. So I went into the Army as a medic and did
Navy, and real simple, just it was the best one to see the world. It's all in your place on the map pretty much.
I was 17 years old. And I joined because one of my friends joined and he wore the uniform to school. And I thought it'd be a cool thing to do and wanted to be like him. And that's honestly, all it took for me to join.
Well, my job in the Army was ammunition. So everybody that needed their bullets and their bombs and their rockets and everything like that, they came to me to get them. And so my training was actually quite fun because I got to learn how to shoot a lot of really kind of interesting weapons. It was really pretty darn fun. It's things that you guys might not ever get the opportunity to do, and you probably should never do.
For me, it was a little tough, but it was fun. You have people obviously in your face. You've seen it in the movies, probably yelling at you and all that, but the physical aspect was pretty tough, obviously, because I'm so tiny. But in the end, you just have fun with it.
So basic training for the Air Force is 7 to 8 weeks long, and it's It's a lot of mental training where they teach you to be mentally strong and to rely on each other to be part of a team. And there was some physical work, running and exercise like that after basic training. Then I had to have my technical training. So when I first signed up when I was 17 years old, it was to be a bomb loader. And it took 3 months in Texas to learn how to load bombs. And then after that, we would just have exercises every year, playing war basically.
My training was really long. So based like you go to boot camp first, or in the Marine Corps we call it boot camp, and it's the longest boot camp of any of the branches. So I was there, and we learned how to drill a lot. There was a lot more drilling, not like power tool drills, but like if you're in marching band or you've seen bands perform and they march with instruments, and you like kind of learn to march and turn and pivot at the right time. And I wasn't really into that, to be honest with you. I didn't think we'd be doing a whole lot of that kind of stuff. But then we got to go outside. We got to like hike up mountains and stuff, and we did weapons training. I drove different vehicles, stuff like that.
Well, I did, in my 6 years, I spent 2 of those 6 years overseas in Afghanistan. And their customs are very, very different from ours. And I think we really take for granted some of the freedoms that we have being here in the United States. Over in Afghanistan, a lot of the children don't go to school. They don't have schools in a lot of the different parts of the country because they're very, very poor. Some areas of the country, the women have to wear coverings over their heads and their faces, so you never really get to see anybody outside of just their eyes. Women and children don't talk, especially to strangers. So that's very different from being back here. We have the ability to have a conversation with whoever we want to, and we can look them in the eyes and see their smiles and their frowns and all of the other expressions that they have when you're having a conversation. So those were probably some of the biggest challenges. Like anywhere, there are good people, but there are also a lot of really bad people. So being in a place like that, you just had to be really careful about who you trusted, because you never knew who was a good guy and who was a bad guy.
I did a peacekeeping mission to Kosovo. That was the first time I left the country. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Kosovo. There were 2 religious groups that were fighting each other, and they killed a lot of people. And so I went over there and I just saw like how poorly they lived. Like most of these buildings were bombed out, and I don't recall ever seeing a single building that had windows. They had the buildings themselves, but no windows. So in the middle of the winter in the mountains, it was hard for them to heat their homes. When we'd go to meet these people, they'd offer us coffee and little biscuits, and it was kind of offensive to not drink the horrible coffee.
I was deployed to Afghanistan in 2014, and Afghanistan is a primarily Muslim country, and I was there during the holy month of Ramadan, which was an interesting experience. I worked very closely with native speakers, so people who were born in Afghanistan but then became U.S. citizens, and then they got a job working for the government, being like translators essentially, since they already spoke the language and knew the customs and stuff. And they were practicing Muslims. So during Ramadan, we one thing, Muslims are not supposed to like eat or drink. They're supposed to fast during the day during Ramadan. And so out of courtesy, we would not like eat meals or drink in front of them, because we wanted to be respectful of them and not like kind of mock them for practicing their religion or anything. So that was one big cultural change, was the religious aspects of when I was in Afghanistan.
Great question. Great question. So, through the tough times, I say that the toughest time, there was 2 times that was really hard, through my time in the service. Boot camp would be one, just because it's a shock to you, because it's completely new to everything that you've been doing or that you've been taught to do. Just knowing the end goal, knowing that the reward that's going to come after fighting through everything in boot camp and being away from your parents and your friends, and then being able to, see them again, was kind of what kept me moving towards that.
When you're deployed, it's talking to your families, your close friends, just communication. So without communication with your family and your friends, it gets kind of lonely. But
Well, I've had a lot of people join because of how I put the military as its benefits. A lot of them wanted more opportunity to make friends, have somewhere to belong, or just to even go and have a new family and explore their options in higher education, like going to college and stuff. So that right there, and explaining that to other people and how that helped you is always a good factor into motivating other people to join and inspiring them.
Let's see. I think especially as a medic, I really got to make an impact on a lot of the people that I helped. So a lot of the soldiers and even the locals when I was in Afghanistan that would come in to be treated or that were sick or injured, just being there and giving them the best care and support that I could is the best way that I know that I made an impact on what I did, doing everything that I could to make sure that all of my friends came back home to their families also.
I think maybe just being a female in the military. When I was in, females only make up about 8% of the U.S. Army. It's a little bit higher now. And I wrote a lot of essays that I received awards for about being a female in the military, about how it's not really that much different than being a man in the military. And then a few years later, they opened up all of the jobs to females in the military, which is something that wasn't available when I was in. So I hope that I inspired some women to serve their country.
It's just great to be back home and to see the support we had from the local branches, the people, the parades, and see your family. There's no feeling like that.
Yeah. For me, like I said earlier, we typically do, when you're in the Navy, you do a 6-month deployment overseas, and then you come back home after 6 months. But when Iraqi Freedom started, we got extended and we were out for 9.5 months. So was one of the longest deployments in naval history. When we came back, President Bush, at the time, George W. Bush, he flew onto our aircraft carrier, and he was there for 3 days. So he came in and spoke to all of us, in a group. And then there's probably a picture out there on the internet from the Abraham Lincoln CVN-72 that has Mission Impossible on it, and with President Bush there. And then I was on that flight deck when that happened. So when we came back, like he was saying, the support from the local branches and from everybody back in the States was unbelievable.
So being Air National Guard, I would be gone 1 week in a month, and I would have exercises that would be between 1 and 3 weeks long throughout the year. So being gone from family, my kids and my wife, it was hard, but it was easy to get distracted because you're working, doing your job. And then when it's time to come home, then it's all the wonderful feelings. You finally get to see your family. you see the, I'm like getting choked up almost. Seeing them just run to you, be so excited to see you, and so proud of what you do. It was pretty awesome coming home. Everything.
I think the military made me a much stronger, and um, it made me more appreciative of the things that I have. Um, I got to meet people from all over the world, and not only all over the world, but all over the United States. I have friends from Alaska and Washington and California, all the way down to Texas and Alabama and Hawaii, all the way up to Maine and Delaware and those states. So it really made that impact on me, is that I got to meet people from all walks of our United States to see how differently we are and our values are based on where we physically grow up. So that's probably the biggest impact, was getting to meet all of those different people and seeing all of those different things that they do compared to how we did things where I grew up.
Definitely a positive impact. I feel like it has helped me really appreciate the importance of working with those around us, even if we don't agree with them, to be good they're called wingmen in the Air Force. Just being a part of something more important than ourselves. It has really helped me grow as a person and appreciate the whole human race and not just myself.
I think the biggest thing is that I went to Afghanistan and I saw how differently people lived and how differently people were treated, especially women. And it just helped me gain a greater appreciation for the freedoms that we have here.
How easy we have it in the United States in general. Everybody has a hard life at one time or another, and there's different reasons that your life feels hard. But generally speaking, there's no other country in the world that has it as good as we do. So that was the biggest thing that the military taught me, is how grateful I should be.
It's just to push forward. You know, there's going to be bad days, there's going to be good days, but on those bad days, you keep pushing because you'll get to that good day.
Also, too, the lesson is we are not as important individually as we are as a group, you know, as one team, you know, being able to not be selfish and be selfless, you know, that would be the thing that I would say.
Made it worth it. Is it always enjoyable? Absolutely not. But I felt like I was making a difference, and it's like I can, for the rest of my life, I can say I'm a United States Marine, and no one can ever take that away from me. So that's pretty cool.